Hey guys, well, we are so happy that you're joining us here today for our VAIMH PD session. We always look forward to it. We also look forward to bringing expertise to you guys from lots of different disciplines and fields. And we have two experts with you today. I'm going to introduce their topic today. They're going to be talking about understanding behaviors. And we always capture feedback from you guys after every session about what you'd like more information on. And this is something that typically comes up. So we're happy to have them here to discuss it. So they're going to be talking about understanding behaviors, triggers, reflections, and expectations. And I'm going to turn it over to Cori to introduce herself, and then Lisa will introduce herself, and we'll dig right into the content. Thank you, Cori.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for inviting us to speak. I am Cori Hill. I am the director of the Virginia Early Intervention Professional Development Center, and also professional development specialist. Mostly what that means is our project oversees professional development for early interventionists who serve children birth to 3 with developmental delays and disabilities. I work at the Partnership for People with Disabilities at Virginia Commonwealth University. And while Lisa is introducing herself, we're also going to ask you, it would really help us if you could drop your role or where you work, whichever is easiest, in chat. It would be really helpful for us to be able to see that too. So go ahead and be putting that in chat, and I'll let Lisa get started.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Terry. I am an early intervention professional development consultant with Cori at the Partnership for People with Disabilities. I am also endorsed as an infant mental health mentor and research and faculty. I co-facilitate the Division of Early Childhood's infant mental health community practice, which is more on a national level, for any of those that are interested in joining that. And Tracy and I actually host a podcast called Meaningful Moments, which is all about infant mental health and early intervention. So we are excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, I love seeing we have Lisa. We have a nice different group. We have direct service EI providers, OT, developmental service. We have people who work at Healthy Families, service coordinators, a behavior consultant. So hopefully we'll be able to help with this topic, no matter what your role is. So, Lisa, we can go to the next slide. Let us tell you a little bit about the call we got to talk about this. And it was, the call was, it would be really good to talk about child development. And Lisa and I were like, oh dear, you probably could have 3 college courses on child development. What can we possibly fit in a 1-hour webinar that we will work really hard to make interactive? So we started narrowing down, like thinking about behaviors and social emotional development. I think what's really important is that a 1-hour webinar such as this is an overview. It is just the tip of the iceberg. We hope that we'll be able to give you some strategies you can use immediately, some resources that you can use, and we'll always come back. If you say more, said the baby, like, what's that book about the palm tree? I can't remember. What's that called? I can't remember. Tracy knows because she's going chicka chicka boom
Chicka
boom.
chicka boom boom.
Yes,
is the one with the coconut tree, and then
yeah.
more said the baby
More,
is a great book.
said the baby.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's take a quick pulse of where you all are. On the slide, you see kind of a slide of how confident you are with your knowledge of typical child development related to behavior, and it got cut off, and social emotional. So you're thinking about child development related specifically to behavior and social emotional. If you can use your stamp feature and put your stamp on whichever of the hands best describes you. I'm fairly new to this, need lots of information, may have intermediate knowledge. I feel pretty confident, but want to learn more, or they should have asked me to do this session. If you're not familiar with how to use the stamp feature, at the top of your screen, you should see that you're reviewing Lisa's screen. Next to that, it says view options, and you can click that little caret that says annotate. And then the fourth one over from the left is a stamp. And you just grab the stamp and you can pick whichever stamp you like and put it on whichever hands. If you are having trouble with those steps, it is completely fine to put it in chat. Lisa and I will be watching that as well. Lisa, it looks like we have a lot of pretty confident but want to learn more. A couple people who are in the middle between intermediate, but more information would be useful.
I love how people it's like, this stuff, but you always are just thirsty for more. I love just the passion for that and, the field of infant mental health and social emotional development and the interest that people have.
I will give you about 10 more seconds. So if you're still trying to get your stamp or I am not getting a buzzing. Is anybody else getting buzzing sound? And my technical skill for this kind of thing is if you're having trouble, it might help to log out and just hop right back in and see if that clears up. So it doesn't look like other people are reporting. Okay, thanks, Anne. All right. Well, Lisa, we'll go ahead and clear that. And I'm going to turn it over for you to start talking about our tools and resources.
I just realized I was on mute. Tracy, are you okay dropping the handout in the chat for us? Thank you. So obviously, it's really important to understand what typical social emotional development is and what atypical social emotional development is and what that looks like and what you should look for and what are some of the characteristics of that, some of those red flags that you might see. And we can't go into this, as Cori said, for this whole 1 hour webinar. So what we did do is provide you with some handouts that you'll have access to. Tracy will find those and drop them into the chat for us. So you do have it, and we'll make sure that everyone that's registered also gets it after in case you don't pull it up. So we'll make sure that you have these handouts, but take a look at them, have them in your toolkit too. It's a great resource that you can utilize. What I am going to go a little bit more into is just the 3 key factors for understanding behavior and what that looks like and what that means. Oh, sorry, we forgot to tell you, if you don't mind just hitting the X on your annotation toolbar, that'll help prevent any little hearts and check marks from popping up on the screen.
Although it is nice to get a heart every now and then. Like,
you can
hey,
keep giving us hearts. I know. So these 3 key factors, this is from, I'm also a 0 to 3 Growing Brain curriculum trainer. And so this is taken directly from that. And so I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about what that is, because it's really important to understand these and really consider them. Anytime we're looking at behavior, whenever we're thinking about it, I just want you to think about these 3 key factors. So the first one is development. We want to know where children are developmentally, right? So you can start by asking yourself, what is the child capable of in all the domains? So you're thinking about cognition, you're thinking about their language, their communication, their social emotional, their physical skills, and how are those child's skills and abilities affecting their behavior? So how is that influencing it? How is it affecting it right now? So for example, you can think of a 9-month-old, right, who might start to protest when the child's dropped off at a childcare center, right? And that's because they're starting to understand object permanence, right? And so they know that even though their parents aren't there, that they still exist. So that is developmentally appropriate for that child. Another example might be a 2-year-old, right, who is starting to refuse to clean up, right? And that's because this 2-year-old, he is exerting his independence because he's got this newfound independence. He wants to do everything on his own, right? So that's very typical for a child that age. What often happens is that even though these children, these toddlers, they want to feel that sense of control, caregivers can really start to look at that as opposition and defiance, even though it's developmentally appropriate. So we just want to consider that. Another important thing, and this is a thing that I really tell all of my families because I think it's really important to educate them on where their child is developmentally, but I always share that children under 3 are reacting based off their emotions. So there is no logic involved whatsoever. So if they feel hungry, they feel tired, they feel upset, they are reacting off of those internal feelings that they're having. So you feel this, and they're going to have a reaction and a response, and that's the behavior that you're seeing. So they really do. Yeah, just that is it, just like my husband, right? We as adults do that sometimes too. But children under 3 have to rely on their caregivers to help them regulate their emotions. The next one is temperament. If it clicks on the screen. Okay, so temperament is really defined as how children approach the world. So they are taking in all of these experiences and then they're responding to them. So temperament is very brain based. It's not something that parents are choosing. It's not something that children are choosing. It's just grounded in their biological makeup. So when we think about a child's temperament, and there's so much that goes into it, you're thinking about a child's intensity. You're thinking about their mood, their adaptability. You're thinking about their persistence level, their activity level, right, which we see a lot, their ability to be distracted or not, their regularity, so like their bowel movements, everything like that, their sensitivity, and then their approachability. So that is what we're thinking about when we consider temperament. I will say that the environment does influence the temperament too. Even though it's brain-based, environment can influence that. Okay, the last one is the environment. So we know that the immaturity of the developing brain does lead to limited self-control for toddlers and infants, right? You want to think about it like Josetta said, just like my husband. You think about all of the experiences that we have had as adults, right, over time. We've had so many opportunities to learn how to self-regulate ourselves, right? And we can still have a hard time regulating ourselves or not always making the best choices or having the best responses to people, right? So when we consider this, we want to just, have a little bit more empathy and understanding for a child who's learning so much in such a limited time, right? And so we really just need to be there to support them. Another thing that we want to really think about is considering, I see in the chat too with the handouts, I do have the handouts saved, so I will make sure I drop them by the end too. So when we consider the environment, we also want to think about those early attachments. More importantly, the quality of those attachments. So we just talked about temperament, right? And so a child's temperament can impact that parent-child relationship. And the reason for that is because those parent-child interactions, they are actually a transactional process. That means that a child behavior is going to influence a parent's behavior, and it can be bidirectional where a parent's behavior will influence a child's behavior. So if you think about a child that might have a negative mood, they might have poor self-control, right? They might receive more negative parenting responses to their behavior. And those negative interaction patterns can really become more difficult to change over time. And that puts these children at a greater risk for behavioral issues later on. Other things to consider with the environment: children living in poverty. They are at risk for they're at great risk for developing self-control, right? So those basic stressors that they are facing, living in a chaotic or unstable environment, that can impact their ability to develop a good self-regulation skills. Other experiences might include alcohol exposure during pregnancy, abuse by a parent or neglect, ongoing stress, and then the pandemic, right? That's a huge one. And I think that we're seeing that, and it's kind of concerning too, because we saw, especially in early intervention, numbers decreased during the pandemic, and now we're seeing a huge rise and it's increasing. And so we can almost imagine that all of these children were impacted by the pandemic, right? And so considering that other changes in family dynamics or the home that can impact the lives of children and their families. So you're thinking about a loss of a family member or even a family pet. You can think about any kind of changes in their childcare that they're going to, or if they're moving to a new home. When parents, if they're separating or they're divorcing, any kind of change in those everyday routines can really impact that. And all of these situations, what happens is the child starts to feel insecure. They might have feelings of sadness, fear. They can have anger that they're feeling. And some children might show that they're a little bit more clingier. They might be withdrawn. They could be a little bit more easily distracted too. And they might show greater frustration too, or any kind of distress, and have a hard time really recovering from any kind of meltdowns that they're having. And so children might become a lot more anxious. They might be overactive or aggressive. And so it's really important to understand what's going on in the environment. And I can't stress that part enough. Okay, so another huge thing that we wanted to talk about are triggers, right? Because look at all of these words when you see triggers. What really stands out to you the most on there? You can go ahead and put that in chat, but what word stands out to you the most when you see this beautiful word cloud about triggers? Just drop that in the chat real quick. Yeah, reaction, emotional, right? Trauma. And so there are so many different triggers. Yeah, those behavior responses, the events, the memory that we can have. And so when any kind of behavior occurs, sometimes it can be a trigger to us as professionals. It can be a trigger to the caregivers as well. It can be a trigger to those in the community and those around us, right? And when people feel triggered, they are feeling an emotional response, right? And so they're feeling that in their body. And when people feel triggered, they can really just react instantly off of that emotional response. Other times, they might have a little bit more time to kind of think about and plan and use their executive functioning and their self-regulation skills to determine what their response is going to be, right? And so we are going to think about these triggers, but what I do want you to always remember is anytime that you're feeling triggered, just take a few moments before you respond, because that really does help calm your system a little bit and help you plan a little bit more before that. So Cori's going to get us started off thinking about those triggers.
And just to address, because lots of people putting in chat, we're working on getting the handout. I think I've opened it that anybody with a link should be able to access. If you continue to have problems, put it in chat. And we'll definitely get the handout to you.
Cori, I'm going to drop it off, right? I'm going to drop it in right now.
Okay. So again, we're going to use the stamp tool and think about triggers. This time you have a scale, kind of like a thermometer, and you can put your stamp on whichever of the faces best describes if you confront this kind of situation. So let's go to the first one.
Sorry, I'm trying to drop it at the same time.
Okay. All right, so think about this one as a trigger. A child is crying loudly at the grocery store checkout line. The crying turns into
sorry.
loud.
This is me just making sure that I put, can you still see the screen?
Yes.
Or I lost it.
Nope,
Okay.
You're good. You're good. Okay, so let's try this one. A child is crying loudly at the grocery store checkout line. The crying turns into loud shrieking. Where do you fall on how you respond to that one? Again, if you are having trouble using the annotate the stamp features, it's fine to put it in chat. We'll be monitoring that. So we have lots of people in the kind of light green, kind of, I'm doing okay with it. More people in the yellow, like, yeah, I do have a reaction. Rhonda says she feels pretty orange. Annette says she's feeling empathy for the parent. Yes, taking that step, like, what is that? What is that feeling like as a parent? Because everybody's looking at you. I have to say, one of my immediate judgmental responses that is completely irrational on my end is probably that child's tired and should be home taking a nap. Like, that's my immediate jump. Now, everything I know professionally is like, that's ridiculous. Why did you jump to that? But that's my honesty. Like, oh my gosh, that child needs a nap. All right, let's take another. We'll clear the screen. Let's try another one. Anne says she was at the grocery store this morning, and her older children were pretty loud and she felt frustrated and but kept her cool. Good for you. That's one of those checks in a mom kind of thing, Anne. So thanks for sharing. All right, Lisa, how about this one?
All right, so the next one is a mother gives her child a directive and the child yells no and spits towards the mother. What is your response? Yeah, a lot of people don't play with spitting, huh?
Especially after having COVID and a pandemic, right? That one became like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and that says red.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so there's another
Spitting
immediate
triggers
response.
me. I love that somebody, I can't see, somebody said, Linda said, it triggers me. That's exactly what we're trying to get at. Yes. You have one more, Lisa?
Let me see. Sorry, I have to clear and get out of this toolbar before I can go to the next slide. Okay, and the next one, or the last one, you are interacting with a child and the child becomes frustrated and hits you. So let's see how you do with the child hitting you. Yeah, you're right, Tracy. It's also a generational issue. It's a thought of being disrespectful. And I think there's a lot of control that we feel like we have to have over children too. Yeah, so more in the yellow this time, a little bit more in the middle. Some in the orange.
I think on this one, Lisa, my younger daughter has a 2-year-old, and one of the things she talks about when hitting happens is if the hitting doesn't hurt you, but if it hurts you, like if you have a reaction, your reaction is a physical, if somebody's hurting me, I want to push them away, versus just kind of, how little kids hit. But yeah, and Leslie says they're hitting because they have strong feelings, trying to convey a message. Yes.
Yeah.
We all know that idea that all behaviors communicate something. We have to think about that.
Yep. And that's so true too. And I see a little boy now and like he's always like hitting and his mother's like, I just don't understand. But it's not to be malicious. Like he's not doing it because he wants to hurt her. It's just a reaction that he has.
Yeah, so those were just really quick, like recognize. So let's think about what's a strategy you're taking away today from this when we think about triggers. So
and make sure you hit that, just make sure that you hit the red X to get out of the annotation toolbar.
All right. So what we want to really encourage you to do is really be thinking about recognizing your own triggers. Why do you have that reaction? What's your physical reaction to that? What's your brain reaction? So I shared one that was a judgment reaction on my part. That child should be home and in bed, versus a example of a physical reaction. The story I shared about my daughter, that hurt me. And I have a visceral response to that because I've been hurt. That is a physical response. So recognize your triggers. When you feel a trigger, taking that time, as Lisa said, to pause, count to 3, 10 can be a really long amount, count to 3, but taking that time to do a quick pause. And then Linda says, pause is the key. Yes, even if it's just a breathing in and taking a pause. But the last one to remember is managing expectations. So when we are quick to feel triggered, then we quickly jump to not having realistic expectations of what child development is. So like Lisa's story that she just shared, that little one is not trying to hurt their mama when hitting happens. So what are the expectations? Recognizing that behavior is telling us something, and what is part of the scope of typical child development, because sometimes when we're triggered, we forget that, even though we've all had tons of courses on child development and behavior. You all said at the beginning, you feel fairly confident about your knowledge about child development, but when you're in the moment, are your expectations what we really know about child development? So let's go. We're going to talk about this technique that changes the way something is expressed to communicate the idea from an alternative perspective. This is from cognitive restructuring work. It's been done for a very long time. Beck started talking about it in 1997, but it's really a way of rethinking what the situation is. And we call that reframing. And so we can go to the next slide, please, Lisa. So when you are thinking about reframing and you're using those tools that we just talked about, thinking about your trigger, pausing, thinking about and managing your expectations, it is really taking that time to reframe that situation and trying to do it more in a positive, what is the child trying to tell me? What is the family trying to tell me? So that's a word we would really like you all to continue to be thinking about. We're going to talk a little bit about the idea when you're practicing this, having a partner, an accountability partner to think about reframing. So again, going back to my example of my quick response, that child should be in bed sleeping. My accountability partner, that's an example I use all the time, and I do have an accountability partner. And I remember the first time she said to me, what if this is the only time the parent can go to the grocery store? And so your answer of putting the child to bed isn't even part of the picture. I was like, oh, I have to think about that. So taking that pause and thinking. So an accountability partner is somebody who helps you constantly think. If you have that quick brain judgment, if you have that physical quick trigger, how do you reframe what's happening? And finding somebody that you feel really safe and having those conversations. Lisa knows I will sometimes call her and say, I had this situation professionally and I really need to think, and I really need some accountability on my response to that. So this reframing practice works not only with what we're specifically talking about with child development, social emotional behavior, but all of our work as professionals. All right, so what we are going to do is we are going to go into breakout rooms. You all are going to have their small groups, probably 3 or 4 people will be in your group. You're going to have 7 minutes and you are going to be assigned to a breakout room to look at a situation, a case vignette. What we are encouraging you all to do is have somebody who will be willing to be your spokesperson so that you can come back and share, because the other groups won't be talking about those vignettes. When we all come back to debrief, everybody will get to hear 4 different vignettes that are tied to social, emotional, challenging behaviors, interactions with families. Lisa, did I miss anything about breakout that you want to?
They need to, so I just dropped into chat the breakout room handout. So You're going to need to download that, click that before you go to your breakout room. You will have 7 minutes in your breakout room, but just make sure you download that first and you have that. Each room that is assigned, it's labeled room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4. And so once you join your breakout room, just pay attention to which room you're in.
Let's take a pause and make sure everybody does have the handout. If you all know how to do, at the bottom of your screen, there's reactions, and you can put a thumbs up or you can put a note in chat. I will give you all just another minute to make sure everybody has that handout before we send you on your way. Thanks, Cori. You look like Annette. Joanne. Hi, Joanne. Yeah.
Actually, Cori, they're going to have
Tori.
larger breakout rooms too. They'll probably be like
Okay.
7 or 8.
Thanks. C. Parker, Linda, Aaron. Hi, Aaron. Yeah, it looks like people are good to go. So take your little handout with you, and in just a second, you will get invited to a breakout room number, and that's the vignette you're going to be working on. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Melissa, let us know if you're having, and Tizia, let us know if you're having trouble getting into your breakout room.
They might have stepped away, but I'm just going to move them. I can move
Okay.
them manually. Oh, maybe I can't. Never mind. Just joking. It only lets me move them to a different room. So I'll just leave it. And actually, let me pause. Oops, not pause share. Let me pause remote for recording. They have 32 seconds before they all have to come back. So it sounds like they're probably still having deep discussions if they're pretty much all in there still. I wish sometimes it gave them like a 2-minute warning too.
Yes.
Countdown.
Yes, that would be really nice.
Because I feel like when you have a 60-second countdown, it's hard to like wrap up.
Yeah, everybody starts talking fast or they just stop talking.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's closing in 1 second. So they're all coming back in now.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, everyone. We know that that was a fast time to talk through some of these questions. I'm sure you had like really good, meaningful discussions around it. So we appreciate you taking the time to do that. So let's go ahead and start with the first breakout room. And I will go ahead and read the scene. And then if somebody can type in the chat, like who is their spokesperson for group room 1, just let me know. And then I'll have you unmute to kind of share some of the feedback from it. So Liam is 19 months old. He lives with his mother, Allison, and father, Neil, and 4-year-old brother, River. Neil has been on deployment for the past month and will return in a few weeks. Allison is concerned because Liam often bites his brother or his toys. He hits when he's upset and throws his toys. What questions would you ask the mother? What could be possible underlying reasons for this behavior? And what would you do next to support Liam and his family? And it looks like Sarah got nominated for room 1. Oh, wait, no, is that room 4?
She got voluntold, whoever.
She got volunteer for room 4, it looks like. Okay, so for room 1, for this one, who was the spokesperson?
I am.
Oh, Sarah, so you are. Okay. All right,
Okay.
Sarah. So go ahead and walk us through your discussion for your questions.
Okay, so yeah, it was good. We all did good. Real quick though, I just want to shout out Debbie. Hey girl, I see you down at the bottom. Hey. So we said some questions that we would ask mom would be is this a new behavior or is it something that has been going on? Maybe does it have to do with since dad's been gone? So kind of figure out that timeline, the
Yeah.
frequency, and what time of day it may occur. What is the triggers, like what event or what scenario is happening prior to him biting? So trying to figure out all that, and his level of communication was also something that somebody had mentioned is he kind of verbal? Does he have some words or is he not? Some of the reasons behind it again would be maybe his thing with dad, his attachment with dad is now that he's on deployment, is he seeing dad at all? So maybe mom does FaceTime dad and he sees dad on the video, and then shortly after that may happen. So trying to figure out how that piece might play in, and maybe mom's parenting style, which dads tend to be more chill, especially with boys. So trying to see her parenting style on that. And lastly, her support, kind of I forget who mentioned it, but kind of piggybacking off what mom already has tried or done, because they are their first teacher. So we don't want to go in and just like we know everything and bombard her. So kind of see what she all has tried, and then Josetta said possibly giving mom some educational information on 19 months old and their behaviors, and so it's not anything like alarming. 19 months old, they tend to bite and everything, so just kind of giving her some educational information about his development around that development for that age.
Yeah, I think you guys hit like some really good questions, especially trying to determine, like, even from the beginning, like, when did this behavior begin, right? Like, that's the foundation. That's what we want to know. That's a good starting point, right? And then we could move into, like, what are the changes that you noticed when his father deployed, right? Another thing too, and if any of you all have any other additions that weren't in this room, feel free to type that into chat too. Any other suggestions that you might have. But another thing too that, like, you could consider is like teething, especially when it comes to biting. Like, I always want to know about teething, right? Like, is the child still teething? Because they're getting a lot of those back teeth still sometimes. And so that can make developmentally, that can be something, an underlying reason. Thinking about their nutrition too and their sleep. If you think about this and this deployment too, that's a huge disruption in a routine for a family, right? Because the father's now no longer there. Any kind of disruptions in the routine that might also impact the meal times. It might impact how the child's sleeping too, right? So I think considering all of that information, I think is so good. And I love how you're kind of thinking about, mom's parenting style and considering that, because you're so right. That can be so different too without dad there. And she can also be more stressed, right? Without his support, and that can influence her parenting style and her responses to her child a little bit more. And again, like, if we think about those three factors, right? If you're thinking about development and you're thinking about the child's temperament and their behavior, one of the things too is looking at impulse control too for a child. Like, what is his impulse control looking like? And educating the parent. I like how you talked about that, because that is such a huge important piece. I think if anyone walks away from anything today, it's just to make sure that we're educating all families, because we don't want to assume that they know this information. We want to make sure that we're providing it too. So educating them and letting them know that their child's going to react based off of their emotions, right? And he's throwing toys, and even looking at his play skills and his play level and where he is developmentally with that, right? Too. He might be throwing toys because he doesn't know what to do with them, right? So really just figuring all of that out is so important. And understanding that reasoning. And I like how you all wanted to look a little bit deeper into that. So let's go to the next one. Thanks, Sarah, for being voluntold. We appreciate it. And again, while I read the scenario, go ahead and drop into the chat who is a spokesperson, and then I will make sure I can call on you after I read through this scenario so everyone knows what's going on in this situation. Okay, so let's meet Gracie. Gracie is 24 months, lives with her mothers, Megan and Sammy. Her parents are concerned because Gracie has no boundaries. When guests are over, she will climb into their lap, she'll show them toys, bringing it close enough to touch their face. At childcare, her teacher reports that she'll go up to any adult and start playing with their hair. She's getting too close to them. In the community, Gracie will stray from her parents if they don't use a leash or a stroller to keep her close. So the questions are, what are your initial thoughts about Gracie's behavior? What could be possible underlying reasons for her behavior? And what strategies would you recommend to support Megan and Sammy? And then what strategies to support the childcare provider? All right, let's see. All right, Joanne.
Okay. So some of our first reactions, and I would invite my team to just jump in if I missed anything, the first response is this child has no boundaries, and maybe we need to teach her about personal space. And does she have an attachment issue with her parents if she's wandering off? And could she have a diagnosis of autism, and which would make it so that she doesn't understand boundaries? And is she seeking connection from others and looking for attention from others?
Yeah, I like that. I like, too, that you're looking at, because these could possibly be characteristics of autism, right? So maybe we need to do a screening for that. Yeah. And that she has that lack of awareness. We don't know about like the family history quite, right? So we're not sure about any of the attachment issues, but those were good points. Does anyone else from her team want to add to that for the initial thoughts?
I'm curious, as you're looking at these vignettes, are these situations you all see? Just give me a thumbs up if these are the kind of behavioral things that, yeah, Josetta says, yeah, Linda says, yeah. Okay, let's try room 3. And again, if you can, whoever was the spokesperson, I'll go ahead and read the vignette to you all. Vanessa is 27 months. She lives with her 19-year-old mother, Kelly. Vanessa has some language delays and frequently becomes frustrated when Kelly doesn't understand what she wants or needs. When this frustration occurs, Vanessa makes a high-pitched screeching noise and falls to the floor in a tantrum. During a home visit, Edith, the home visitor, asks Kelly what she thinks Vanessa is trying to tell her. Kelly responds, "She's just mean. She's just like her father. I never know what she wants." So let's see. Anne, you're the spokesperson. Can you tell us what you all talked about?
Sure, and I'll do the best I can from my memory. So if anyone on the team wants to unmute or type something in, I'm sure I will not be fully comprehensive, but we had a nice conversation and kind of combining 1 and 2, we are trying to both recognize we'd have some feelings in response. Those feelings could include some sadness, maybe some empathy for the child, sadness that the child who is young and has a language delay is being perceived as mean by her mom, maybe some empathy and sadness and recognizing frustration for this mom who's a young mom and has a young child and is having behaviors that are difficult, and she says she never understands her child, and imagining that the father's relationship with her has been stressful. So she's getting triggered and is going through a lot. So we may have different feelings about that and trying to pause and have empathy. We thought the questions, someone on my team, I don't have her name down, but she was, who you are, was doing a great job modeling the wondering questions. So the questions could include, I wonder what your child was trying to communicate. I wonder how your child was feeling. I wonder, or just what happened right before this event, trying to help the mom have empathy and greater awareness into what the child was feeling and maybe what the child was trying to communicate but can't given their age and delay. And we would feel like there were some other good questions that I'm forgetting. I think ideas, we ran out of a little bit of a time on that, but some information maybe around the age of the child, the language delay, maybe some of the slides you shared earlier, Cori and Lisa, about helping the mom be able to pause and wonder and reflect, and to have some self, empathy too, because she's going through a lot. But if she can have that for a child and herself at the same time, she might be able to support the child's emotion regulation and support their child's language skill development potentially.
And Tracy wrote this in chat, but and one of the things that I wonder is such a powerful tool. It helps the parent to reflect on the situation. It helps the parent maybe to reflect on, because we're not going to go into parents and say, what's your trigger on this? But I wonder what this feels like for you, or I wonder what you think she's telling us. So, I think this is one of those situations where the child has some behaviors, but as you all are talking, the parent is dealing with some responses to those behaviors. So important to think about that. I also love, you guys are starting to put some of the strategies in chat. If room 3 has strategies and room 4, if you add those, we'll add them to the handout too. So you can then have a compare and with the vignettes, if you want to use it for staff development or something, or things that we thought about. And Tracy says, wondering takes us immediately away from the judgment and into listening. It's one of those reframing tools. And thank you, and group 3, for sharing that. Let's go ahead and go to see what I said. We cannot cover everything in an hour, but we're going to do our best. So let's go to number 4. Gabe is 33 months. He lives with his mother, Aaliyah, and her boyfriend, Titus. Gabe often uses a whining voice to tell his child care provider what he wants and needs. He frequently asks if he can get his lovey out of his cubby, and occasionally falls asleep in the book or the quiet corner. An observer visits the child care center where she observes Gabe asleep during a busy classroom activity. The child care provider shares he falls asleep all the time and is so whiny. It's because he goes to bed whenever he falls asleep. His parents have no routine, no schedule, and they just let Gabe do whatever he wants. So who's our group 4, room 4 person? Debbie. Debbie, did you know you were room 4 person? I'm trying to find Debbie.
I volunteered. I had asked her if she would do it, or somebody. I don't know who wants to do it because we didn't get to that piece.
Okay. So what did group 4 talk about? Somebody unmute and tell us.
They put in there Linda. Okay, Kelly.
Linda, now like that's like that. What my girls always do this. Nose goes. I guess you're it.
I think I'm it. I'm voluntarily told to do it.
That's right.
Basically, the reaction was trying to better understand some of the comments, and I didn't take notes, so I'm going off of memory. Trying to understand why the caregiver had the reaction that they did, being judgmental, not thinking first, on how that household may run. Some of the comments were, trying to better, asking questions rather than being judgmental. The other thing, think of questions you would ask the child care provider, like, how is the household? What's his day like? I think Debbie was one that said, ask, what is his best part of the day? So maybe this is a time where he's just tired because maybe he didn't get enough sleep. Did he get enough sleep? Does the parents have a routine? What's going home? The third one is, how could the child care provider have an open discussion with Gabe's parent? I don't remember what all said, but I remember what I was saying as we were running out of time, is talk about the things that he does well. When is the good part of his day? And then start asking questions like, we noticed that during this time of the day, he's very tired. Does he have a schedule? What do you do? I think someone said, does he have nap at home? Does he have a nap routine at home? So those were basically the overall, because I didn't write down
No, you did it. You did a
notes.
great job of a lot of conversation. I think again that probing, asking questions. I also know I saw was it you, Jaylene, did you write that? That there was a lot of information shared with somebody who just walked in off the street, an observer.
Yeah.
We purposely did this one. They're like, we've been talking about parents or caregivers and children. We have some stuff with a child care provider who's having some triggers about some of this too. And again, that's one of those triad relationships that we have to, now we're thinking about 3 different people that have triggers and how they're taking the pause. So Jaylene, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah.
No, good. I covered it. I summarized that. That's great.
You did.
Thank you. Yeah. So the other thing is that you all took some time to think about reframing some of what are the positives, what are the good behaviors. So I put in chat because our time is running short. We will leave the Zoom open. If you have other suggestions and strategies, feel free. And again, we can add those. We always like to end our training with something very purposeful and meaningful. So action planning is what we call that. What we want you to do is take we have about a minute, and I want you to, for some of your own personal accountability, what's one thing that you learned today or that you want to try or practice or share with a colleague, whatever it is, find an accountability partner. Take one thing that you want to do based on what you just spent an hour of your life doing and put it in chat. Linda got us started, understanding my own triggers, and take that pause. Thank you, Linda.
And feel free to drop any questions, or we put our email in there too if you have any questions and you want to email us, because we do understand that this was just not enough time to really go into everything.
Yeah, people like the pause and the accountability, thinking about your own trigger, using I wonder. Josetta, teenage behaviors are similar to toddler behaviors. Absolutely. Notice your own heart rate and breathing when you face a triggering situation. Yeah. Thinking about the role of temperament. Yeah. I'll give you all another minute. A self-check before you respond, taking that pause again. And remember, always think about managing your expectations of what is typical child development and how you can support the family. So
And educating the family on typical child development.
Exactly. We are at the end of a very short time, but we enjoyed talking with you all. As I said, we'd be happy to come back if there are more things. Lisa dropped in chat, and you can also see on screen. You are welcome to email one or both of us, and we are happy to talk more about this. So I hope you all have a nice day. And we hope to see you soon.
I just want to say really quickly, Lisa and Cori, thank you so much. This was really wonderful. And obviously by the chat and the breakout rooms, it was a really good opportunity for us to think about things we're seeing in our practice every day. And so really practical and very helpful. So thank you guys for giving your time to us today. It's much, much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone.
Tracy. Thank you, everybody.
Sure. Take care, guys. Everybody be well.